2 minutes, directors. Hello, directors. We're waiting for all directors to be seated so we can proceed. Welcome.
It's hard to say.
So I'd like to call the inaugural meeting of the Committee of the Whole for 2024 to order and proceed with the election of chair. If I could have nominations from the floor, please. Director Mawhinney.
I will nominate Director Chapman.
Director Chapman, you be nominated. Would you accept that nomination?
I would accept it if the board wanted me to do that, yes.
Thank you. Are there further nominations for chair position? Director Kerr?
Thank you. I was just going to say, the only qualification is that you get the meeting through as fast as possible and as efficiently as possible, and then I'll vote for you.
Understood. Are there any further serious nominations? Hearing none, we'll declare Director Chapman elected as chair.
Go 3 times?
Did.
Oh, okay.
One of them might have been, well, Director Kerr's I counted as one. Nominations for vice chair for 2024, please.
I'll nominate Director Mawhinney.
Director Mawhinney, would you accept that nomination?
That's exciting, sure.
Thank you.
I mean, yes, thank you.
Are there further nominations for vice chair position? For the third and last time. Hearing none, declare Director Mawhinney vice chair of the Committee of the Whole for 2024. Thank you. Director Chapman, would you like to? Yeah. You do. Yeah.
Is there a rule that says?
There is. Yeah.
This chair is so high, it makes me dizzy. Okay, where are we at here?
On item E, First Nations territory.
Oh, yes. We acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory of the Blackwatak people, and thank you to them. Okay, the next is that the agenda for January 24, 2024 inaugural meeting of the Committee of the Whole be adopted as presented.
So moved.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. There's no petitions or delegations. Adoption of the minutes. That the minutes of the regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole held November 8, 2023 be adopted as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Oh,
Moved and seconded. Any opposed? That is carried. Okay, there's no business. I thought there was business arising. Oh, yes, there is. Okay, staff reports. So the item K, staff report, that the report from the Chief Administrative Officer be received.
Received.
It's been moved,
second.
seconded.
I think Renee will start here, Mr. Chair, and then pass it off to Tracy.
Thank you, Renee.
Good afternoon again, directors. We're here today to take a look and work on our strategic plan for the next 3 years. And if you'll remember back in June, we had the full day workshop. In November, we met again. We were able to finalize the vision statement. The board provided quite a bit of feedback on the strategic plan. We went back and edited the draft plan and hopefully incorporated all your feedback and the email feedback that we received after that meeting, and have another draft in front of you. And at the November meeting, the board did ask to have Tracy come back and facilitate a session to finalize this plan. So Tracy's online, and I will pass it over to her.
Excellent. It looks like my camera's frozen. Can you hear me though?
Yes.
And see you.
Okay. Okay, am I moving? I'm not moving in my world, so that's good. I won't.
You're moving just fine.
Thank you very much. So first of all, thank you to those of you that submitted feedback. I feel like between the last session and this one, we've really tightened up some of the language. So to those of you that provided your feedback, that's great. So the purpose, as I understand it today, is not to workshop again, but just to do a final check-in that we're done. And so that's the goal, is not necessarily to reopen all this again. So we did make one change though, and this is, if you like it, it was staff's idea. If you dislike it, it was mine. But the one of the things that we've done, I'm just going to share my screen. If you can let me know if that's come up. I'm just going to share the proper screen. Bear with me here. So are you seeing your, basically, this is the product, if you recall, of that workshop, the other session. I'm not going to go through necessarily all of the pages because there weren't significant changes, but really where we ended up was on these three key themes. And if you recall at the last session, we did give line of sight into some of the more operational, like how this is going to be actioned. Because at the level of a strategic plan, this is really a framework for decision making. And in many ways, the management of the projects through your CAO is where the rubber hits the road. So we gave line of sight into that last time. But usually projects specifically aren't implemented into the plan. So really what you've ended up with is these three areas of focus: community well-being. Obviously, that touches on some of the things that really do impact your residents and the health and well-being of those residents. And one of the themes throughout your dialogue is that your region has a lot of unique characteristics. So the board really did understand that the need to do things in a regional way, but to recognize the nuances of the uniqueness of your areas. And so when we talk about some of these things, there's going to be, for example, there's going to still be ongoing discussions around economic health, for example, because we know that forestry and aquaculture are topics that should have robust discussions as those matters hit your table, because there are a range of views on those. And just, through the chair, if you're seeing any, in need for people to jump in, don't hesitate. But other than that, I'm just going to go through this and sort of let you know the way we're approaching this. Climate resiliency. There's no doubt in your region that your natural environment is one of your most powerful competitive advantages compared to other communities that I have the great pleasure of working with, but also that level of the regional role in being prepared for emergencies that exist outside of a footprint is certainly an emerging area. So that client resiliency mitigation was something that, we did talk about at the workshop and at the last session as well. And then, to this board's credit, a lot of focus on how you lead and the modeling the behaviors of strong governance that your residents expect in your area, including systems that manage the costs of services. Costs are obviously something that people are very concerned, but the second point really looks at how do you use technology, systems, and otherwise to continue to deliver high quality services while being profoundly aware of the financial impact of those.
Tracy?
Yes, please.
Tracy, Director Wally has a question he'd like to pose.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I can support this strategic priority as it's laid out there. I think it was well done. I have one area of disappointment, perhaps, that at our last meeting, we discussed, at least for 15 minutes, the question about affordability. And I had asked that it be included in the areas of focus. And just let me make one further comment here that I thought perhaps a phrase to the effect, evaluate affordability for new services and service expansion initiatives would have been appropriate after our last discussion. And I would like to see that added.
Thank you for that input through the chair. And you'll see that we did add affordability in as the first item under community well-being as a, so that was added in. If that's not sufficient for the board, and we would like to see that broken out, but that was really where in that area of focus is that housing diversity, affordability, just that notion of how people experience your region was why we put it in the first bullet of the first page of that. But if there's any desire to change that, that's certainly open for dialogue.
Thank you for that explanation. Yes, certainly it affects housing, but that wasn't my primary concern. My primary concern was for every area of new service that we create or existing service that we expand, that at least we evaluate as a board whether it's affordable by our constituents. So I'd like to see that in the area of focus.
So more under good governance in how you make decisions. Am I understanding that correctly?
Exactly.
Is that something that the rest of the board would like to see?
Any comments from any of the directors? Director Sinnott?
Yeah, I see that under areas of focus, we have build sound and efficient systems to protect the region's asset and deliver services in a reliable and fiscally responsible way. Perhaps it could be added to that concept in there, considering the affordability of services on the recipients.
I agree. That'd be great.
Okay. Tracy, do you want to discuss that more?
I guess what I want to know, for staff, just the clarity around, does fiscally responsible include affordability? Do you want it broken out? The challenge with affordability is a very unique and individual measure. And I'm not saying we shouldn't include it for that reason, but it is what is affordable may not be what, to one resident may not be what you can deliver in a fiscally responsible way. We know that, waste systems, for example, are getting more expensive. We can absolutely make that change. I just need through the chair to make sure that that's the direction of the board as a whole.
Well, I just want to discuss a little bit more because, if I can just speak from the chair just for a minute. I mean, affordability is very subjective. And how do you quantify that? How do you measure that? Director Wally, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think under good governance, as we consult with our constituents, they will certainly tell us whether they can afford it or not. And yes, it's an individual thing. A lot of people are wealthy enough it doesn't make any difference. Every new cost makes a difference, but it's just like average house values. There's, an average wage, there's an average cost of living, and there's an average amount of money that the average person has to spend. And all I'm asking is that we evaluate it. We just consider it. I'm not saying that it makes a yes or no on anything. It's just a consideration. And I think if the word was just added, as Director Sinnott suggested, beside fiscally responsible, you can say fiscally affordable or affordable and fiscally responsible, or just stick the word in there somewhere, I'd be content.
And is that instead of where it is already?
Well, it's already in housing, so that's not the issue I had in mind.
Oh, and just for clarity, that first one, what the other thing we might do through the chair to the director is if we swapped this around, support affordability and housing diversity, because I think you're right. I think the Director Wally is highlighting that it looks like a qualifier on housing. Mm-hmm. The way this is worded, it wasn't the intention, but I wonder if we swap those around, if that makes a difference. So it's sort of a standalone statement, Director Wally, and then housing diversity is is the add-on to that, because then it is the first item in the first point.
Whatever the board's pleasure.
So do we need a question?
That was just a thumbs up, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I support that.
Director Kerr?
Yeah, that's a thumbs up. I was just going to say about affordability, I mean, it is quantitative, but I think also the opposite, not affordable, is also, I mean, once you reach that territory, you know it. So, I think it's important. It's important, and the recommendation, it makes sense to me.
So do we need a resolution to change this?
I will defer to the CAO on that.
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
we have consensus
Okay, we
here.
have
Tracy.
consensus.
Does anybody not support that?
Yeah, I think we have consensus, so I think we can make that change. Thank you, Tracy.
So just for clarity before we move on, under community well-being, we are saying support affordability and housing diversity with the remainder, and we're not putting it elsewhere. Am I understanding that correctly? Just for staff, so that I don't think the board wants to see this come back again, so I just want to make sure we're crystal clear before we leave.
That's what I'm hearing.
Excellent. So sorry. Do you mind if I continue then?
Yes, please.
Okay. The other area that came up, and it came up from the CIO highlighting, one of the things that you as a board have been very successful in doing is advocacy. And we noticed that a lot of the discussion that we had, not just at the workshop, but last session related around your advocacy initiatives. And so one of the things that we did was put an advocacy page in here. And that reminds your residents that there are many things you as a board care deeply about in your regions and in your municipalities that may be outside of your areas. And, eventually as this gets refreshed, there's the option of putting your top advocacy priorities on this page. I don't think we had it fleshed out enough, but just that notion that there are many things you care about and want to use your juice, not just through ABICC, but also locally. So that notion about making that clear, and then also communicating those things out to your residents so that you candidly get credit for the things that you're investing time and energy in with other levels of government. And this is a new addition, and I just wanted to check whether having a mention of advocacy in your plan was something that the board wanted. We can easily pull it out, but I think it does sort of start to remind our residents of the range of views, like that things are not necessarily in your wheelhouse.
Okay, I have a speakers list. I have Director Wally and then Director Von Esch.
I agree that advocacy is extremely important. We have our governmental advocacy at UBC and AVICC, and they have specific dates, and we put forward our concerns to those at those specific times. But I don't like the idea of having an annual meeting for this specific purpose, because usually these things that we want to advocate about pop out from time to time through the year, and that's the time we need to deal with them, and we'll send a letter to the minister, or we'll arrange a meeting with some department, like Department of Transportation or something, to advocate for some specific thing. So if we had an annual meeting at that specific date, those things may not even be on the radar. So I think we should just address them as they come to the board.
We could, if I can, Mr. Chair, say something like participate in advocacy planning sessions, so.
Yep. Director Von Asch?
Yeah, I was going to add something along the same. You could make it simple. The board will proactively identify the key issues and priorities, and just make it clear that like this is something we're going to do, and we're going to put it in the agenda. It doesn't necessarily have to be a planning session. So that first will participate in an annual advocacy planning session could be taken out. Just go to the board proactively identifying.
Okay, next is Director Mawhinney, and then we have Director Lanyon.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really happy we're talking about this because it's sort of related to one of the questions that I had come up with when I was reading the plan earlier. And that's that in the process of the plan, it says that step 5 is an annual report to the board and the public on progress of the strategic plan. And what I'm wondering is if there is a schedule or plan for annually reviewing the strategic priorities and updating or reprioritizing if they needed to. And the reason I bring that up now when we're talking about advocacy is because personally, I would like to see us reviewing the strategic priorities on a calendar which provides adequate time for us to identify outstanding priorities and then the relevant meetings which would be booked with ministries at UBCM, if appropriate.
So if I can, Mr. Chair, we do a bit of a hybrid of that anyways. Like you can see we're, a year and maybe close to a half into a 4-year term. And so we would do a few things. One, before we get to things like AVIC and UBCM, is we hold at boards, we have specific sessions about what are we going to advocate for and topics and discussion points. So we do those at different times. In my mind, I would see a review of the strategic plan before budgeting so that we're trying to align our budgets with those strategic plans. Now we're going to get this done here in the next month, and that'll give us another 6 or 7 months until we start to introduce the new budget session, and it's a good time in my mind to refresh it. So I don't know if it needs to be mapped out specifically, but there are times, like Director Wally says, we'll have sessions for advocacy at specific times, and prior to budgeting, I think that's a good time. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but.
I think it does, as long as maybe when we are having that meeting where we're discussing our UBCM advocacy, for example, if the strategic priorities are a part of that conversation.
Yeah, I think they have to be. It would be weird, I think, if they're not, that the board says these are the things that are important to us, and then we don't use that in our advocacy. That means Tracy's done something tragically wrong.
Me, it's your plan.
Well, hold on, you said blame the consultant. Oh, sorry.
Okay, I did say that. I take that.
Director Lanyon.
I actually kind of like the logistical aspect of an annual focused advocacy planning session for the reason that we may get henpecked by small issues throughout the year that distract us from our core mission. And if we can establish the areas we're going to touch and the areas we're going to leave alone for that year, that will save us all time and fights. So I actually like the way this is laid out. There would be a structured approach to advocacy where we exclude certain topics that are too controversial, either to the community or on this board, that are just going to create divisions. And then once we identify the areas that we will touch, then we can allow those into the meetings. But I don't want it to be a free for all.
Director Wally.
Yeah, just a comment there, Director Lanyon. From time to time, the Solid Waste Board will ask us to advocate in their behalf. There's no way we can foresee in advance what they're going to ask for, but those are significant, important things.
Yes.
So at an annual advocacy planning session, we would establish that we're willing to advocate on their behalf. So they would be on a pre-approved list of topics that we'll touch, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense. Sometimes electoral areas will have specific concerns with various areas of their land use management they'll want to advocate the province for, and we can't foresee those in advance. So I'm just saying there's a lot of things that'll come up that aren't radical, and they're not insignificant, that should be considered.
Any further discussion?
Other than maybe listening to the discussion, we should have some wording that doesn't limit us as well. Because as Director Lanyon said, whether we write annual in there or not, one thing I'm very confident we're going to have is a session prior to UBCM, right? So let's say we have that in June or July. We're whether this says it or not, we're going to have that, right? And that's probably our focal point of when we're going to do annual advocacy, and that's what our thinking was when we put that term in there. If we can put some language in there that allows some ability, as well as the Director Wally says, to do something ad hoc, no harm in that, but we are practically going to do it prior to UBCM, much like you'll do it at the city as well, right? That's when you're going to focus on it.
Director Von Ash.
Thank you, Chair. The only other comment I had was under climate resiliency. Just the last point there, explore opportunities to reduce our carbon footprint in the delivery of services. I'd love to see that aligned with like some of the other wording which says support. You know, it doesn't mean you have to support every single thing, but I think it's just a stronger wording and shows more leadership around that issue.
Could you, okay, which one is that? The last point?
Under climate resiliency, that third point, just switch out explore to support, similar to the climate resiliency point above.
Oh, I see, okay. Any comments on changing that word to support?
I have
Director
a thumbs
Wally?
up on that one.
Just as a general philosophical comment, when it comes to telling the board you shall support something, maybe I won't support it. So I don't think that's appropriate. We're here to vote according to our conscience, not to vote according to some policy that we make. So I think we should examine it and vote accordingly.
And I totally agree. It's always, doesn't, just because we have support in there doesn't mean we're going to do every single thing that would do that. It's what's appropriate and what we feel is best when we do that vote. I still think support is, it just gives us more like, okay, yeah, we want to make this a priority. We're not just going to explore, we're not just going to look at ideas, but we want to actually take some action.
Okay, we have Director Mawhinney, Director Smythe, and Director Kerr.
My only comment is that I support changing the word to support.
And
Well, I just feel like we're, I understand support is a stronger word, but then the stronger word is going to then can be held against us at times. Like, you guys are supposed to be supporting this. If we decide not to do something, then we can get pushback saying, well, you're supposed to be supporting these initiatives. Where if you're exploring every opportunity and deciding which opportunity gets the best payback,
yeah,
I support the word explore.
okay, we have Director Kerr and Director Lanyon.
I'm more comfortable with explore rather than support. So I like the way it stands.
Director Lanyon.
I have a compromise. So at the end, we can put comma and support where appropriate. Or where
we-
agreed.
Explore it. Could we, as a suggestion, could we put support / explore opportunities? Director Mawhinney?
I noticed that we, in another point over there in the community well-being, we use the word consider. So maybe we want to add the word consider, to consider opportunities. That could be a compromise between explore and support.
Any comments on that suggestion? I like it. Director Davis?
I think we're going around in circles here. I'm fine with explore myself. It's just semantics, really. I mean, everybody gets the idea we're trying to put ahead here, or put forward. So, anyway.
Any suggestions, Tracy? You got your hand up?
Well, first of all, I think this discussion's good, and it's more important that you know what you mean than the actual wording, in the sense of this. So this discussion is healthy. It does sound like there is an intention to do things around reducing your carbon footprint. it's not a blank check in the strategic plan. The explore was intended to be, an active verb, sort of looking for opportunities. My hand was actually raised to clarify the language on the advocacy before we close off, but we can do whichever makes sense for the board. But it's more important that you know what you all mean and that the word is not inconsistent with that. Because I don't think any of you are saying you'll do whatever comes to you. And I do think there is a willingness to look for opportunities to explore your carbon footprint. But again, this needs to be read in conjunction with the other provisions around, fiscal responsibility and that sort of thing. All of these things get read together.
Okay, let's good point. Thank you, Tracy. So let's deal with the last discussion, the climate resiliency. Explore, support, or what was the other suggestion?
Consider.
The support where appropriate.
Does explore gets to be on there or not?
We could make up a new word.
Chair.
Sorry? Julie? Director Coburn?
I think the word was consider.
Oh, consider. Thank you. You're right.
I'd be happy with consider. I think that's good middle ground. I think that's all I'm really asking for.
Anyone opposed to consider?
Explore stronger than consider? I don't know where we're going here.
I would really just like support, so I get it. I think you're alone on that one.
I do not support.
Okay, have we beat that one up enough?
What's the word we're going with?
We'll revisit next week.
Let's just leave it and talk about it next year.
All right.
Yeah.
Support stays?
Support? You want support?
Yeah, I think explore everybody. I think that's kind of the feeling here. And I just want to recognize that this is I think the first year that we've had this as a priority on our strategic plan. So I just want to recognize leadership around here and that we are, recognizing that this is something that we do need to explore. So thank you all.
Okay, so now I'm confused. Where are we at now? Okay, we're gonna leave it. Okay, so Tracy.
Julie has her hand up.
Sorry, Julie? Yeah, Director Coburn, I mean?
Thanks. Because I am participating from here, I can't hear the comments if people aren't using their mics. So there are points in this conversation where I'm like, what's going on? What's happening? Who's saying what? Why are everybody laughing? So just so you know.
Well, I've got news for you. I'm sitting here and I'm doing the same thing. So, okay, so Tracy, you wanted to go back to advocacy and clarify the wording?
Yeah, I think that what I heard is the board will proactively identify the key advocacy issues and priorities, but not limiting yourself in the plan to how you're going to. We haven't done that anywhere else, and whoever pointed that out, I think that is a good catch, that the mechanics of how you do things isn't everywhere else in the plan. But the intention is that you get together at least annually, is my takeaway. But also, part of the reason for doing a larger discussion annually is your advocacy juice is limited.
Yeah.
If everything matters, nothing does. So there does need to be some choices between what matters most to the board as a whole. And so there and that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be live and nimble, where your CIO can call a session or carve out time at a board meeting to discuss an emerging advocacy issue. But I just wonder here is if we said the board will proactively identify the key advocacy issues and priorities, does that capture what the board was speaking about?
Yeah, I think so. But the question I have, I'm going to put the CAO on the spot here, is that with these changes, does this give you enough direction as to where we want to go?
Yeah, I think there's a combination of practicality. As I said, we're going to have an annual session before UBCM to talk about that. And, listening to the conversation, there's a will, should there be points to pivot on to bring stuff up, so.
Director Wally.
Yeah, I'll just point out that as today, any director at any time could make a motion, I move that the chair write a letter to so-and-so to advocate for this. I mean, that's just general business at the board.
Yes, good point. Accepted. Director Mawini.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for, I guess, the board and staff and Tracy around good governance. Something that I have been really hoping for a little bit more transparency on for even directors and beyond directors, the community and the residents that we serve on our corporate policies. And I'm just curious if, I think I brought that up at a previous meeting, and I'm not sure if working towards having more availability of being able to access those is maybe fits in one of these and I just don't really see it, or what Tracy thinks about that, or anyone else for that matter.
I have a thought. I think that's more, and I've heard you speak to that before. I think it's more actually a matter of logistics than the concept or the principle or the philosophy of it. That's a logistical thing that we continue to work on. Like we're not trying to hide things, but you know, there's only so much time and resources, and we continue to work on that because transparency is something that we're keen on, and but to focus resources, say we're just going to do this for a period of time isn't really that practical, but we continue to work on that. Maybe not at the speed you hope for, but we utilize the resources we have and we put it towards it. It's kind of like the website too. We know it isn't the perfect oil painting that we want, but we continue to chip away at that. I'd say that's just a logistical resource issue.
And I think it does come under, we are open and honest, we adhere to the highest standards of ethical conduct. That's room for, you to address that, I think, maybe.
And accountability as well.
Yes. So, okay, back to you, Tracy.
As long as we're comfortable and the staff you as a region are doing a really good job. As long as staff are clear on this languaging, I think you have yourself a strategic plan. And I'm really proud of how you kept coming back to make sure there was full ownership of this strategic plan. I know that it was very close the last time we left, but I really think your staff pulling this back together just to make sure this was your plan. So from my perspective with those changes, I think you've got a really good plan. And more importantly, you've had really respectful and fulsome dialogue around issues in this plan, including some of the things we just talked about being sensitive to environmental issues, but the boundaries, and knowing that you'll have robust discussions around initiatives that lie underneath this as well. So from my perspective, I think you're good to go with those changes.
Okay, so do we need a resolution accepting the strategic plan as amended? Oh, Director Kerr, sorry.
I was going to make that motion.
To you.
What you just said, I think he's saying.
Okay. Director Kerr moved it, seconded by Director Wally. And all in favor? I don't see anybody opposed.
Did we vote on receipt, Mr. Chair?
We did. Yeah. Director Kerr?
Move termination.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Passed. Have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracy.
That wasn't fair.